So, Kathy, if you can let us know where you are, who you are, a little bit about maybe how you got into astrology, just to kind of familiarize everyone with how you work.
I'm outside New York City on a mountain lake in northwestern New Jersey. My website is empowermentunlimited.net, and my YouTube channel is Professional Aquarian. I have forecasts for every week, month, new moon, full moon. I am a maniac. In my Facebook group, the Astro Insight Lounge, I talk a lot about how current events are playing out the astrology. I got into astrology from an interest as a preteen in all things mystical and mysterious and magical, and was a lawyer, and I still am, sort of. And while I was studying for the bar, I started having precognitive dreams, and my intuition just blew out like a pressure cooker exploding. And ever since then, I've been studying and learning. I actually went to astrology school in my mid-20s after I left formal law practice and went out on my own. So I've been doing this for a while, and I love to anytime something happens, I'm a maniac. I go straight for the ephemeris and say, I got to know what this is. So I'm always looking at the astrology of events and how things play out. And it's really, truly remarkable. So where would you like me to start?
I want to know where you went to astrology school.
I
never heard of an astrology school. Is it like a formal?
They're all over the place. I went to one called the Houston Institute of Astrology. And it met in a building that was owned by John Gray's mother. You remember Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, or whichever way.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, a place called the Aquarian Age Bookshelf.
And his mother owned it?
With her partner.
Were you in Houston at the time?
Yeah, I was in Houston for a long, long time.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I have, pretty much anything that goes on, I'm about 2 degrees most a separation from it. So I've lived many places and have connections with all kinds of weird things. Partly why I call myself a professional Aquarian, because we're clearinghouses of people and information. It's just
yeah.
how we wire.
And what is it in your specific personal chart, would you say, makes you more inclined to be into astrology? There must be some configuration.
Oh, well, I have, astrology is associated with the sign of Aquarius, and I have Sun and Mercury, which is mind and communication, actually in so close to each other in my chart that it's called in combust, like they just sort of explode together. And it's in a direct contact with Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius. So I'm a very Uranian person.
You couldn't avoid it. Well, you couldn't not be who you are.
There are other
right?
things I could have done, and I did. I've done many things. I have a lot of Sagittarius in my chart. So
I right.
Wander here and there.
And I'm a Sagittarius, and I can totally attest to that. We're so curious, and we're the eternal explorers. I think the motto for Sag is "I seek." What is it for Aquarius?
I know.
Oh, that's even like you arrived.
The thing is, the longer you live as an Aquarian, what really turns into I don't know. Like,
yeah, that's true. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know. Mm-hmm. So I was saying to people the other day that we live in very tumultuous times, obviously. And I have Church of Spirituality, and in my sermon yesterday, I spoke to that to me it's a psychic fact that we chose to be here during these times, and that those of us who have been, our souls chose to be here during these times, and those of us who are spiritually inclined and who would speak that sort of language that I'm speaking would understand that there are no accidents, and it's no accident that our souls chose to incarnate once again during this time in history. I wondered if you can speak to us about why, like, what started this major sort of tower card energy that I would peg at, say, 2012 in the United States. Because really, I mean, you look at documentaries, like, for instance, about Barack Obama and what was going on, prior to him being elected president, and then all of a sudden it was just like kind of business as usual. Of course, democracy isn't perfect. We all know that. It's a work in progress. It's the great experiment. And up until that time, people were relatively civil. You wouldn't have seen this kind of discourse that goes on, or you can't even call it that anymore. You wouldn't have seen these really uncivil conversations to the degree that they've just kind of exploded on the scene. That they started around 2012, I would say. Maybe a little bit later than that. So I wonder if you can speak to what happened. Yeah. Oh, I just popped into my head. Wasn't there something major?
Yes.
Something major happened in 2012.
Well, a process started in 2012. The outer planets of the zodiac, the ones that are of the solar system, the ones that are toward the end of it, are generational or collective influences largely. And two of them are associated with change. I call them the cosmic change agents. One of them is Uranus, the agent of unexpected change, and also really quick and flips things on its head. And one of them is Pluto, the agent of unavoidable change, evolutionary level change. In 2012, those two planets started meeting in a harsh aspect called a square, which is a demand for action, in the signs of Aries and Capricorn. And they did it 7 times over a number of years. So they started this process of ramming against the foundations of our institutions, our structures. Pluto in Capricorn. Mm-hmm. Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008. So starting in 2012, Aries is far enough along. I mean, Uranus is far enough along in Aries. It starts ramming that, and it's like a wrecking ball going over the same thing from different angles, again and again and again and again. And it started a lot of things cratering. And that's been worked on since then. Does that, that makes sense,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if we can point to maybe a couple of specific historic events from that time that would have been where you would have said, that's Uranus, that's in Aries, you said, right?
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind is as soon as Uranus moved into Aries, Fukushima happened.
Okay.
Nuclear reactor in Japan,
right,
hit the waters.
That makes sense.
It's so odd. I have lived through this so intensely and counseled so many people that all the data in my head is about stuff that's much more current at this point. But I will say didn't this coincide with John McCain and Sarah Palin's campaign against Barack Obama in the years, right? Like, I think it was like 2012 to 2017. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, that was around 2012.
And so those two pairings, Obama being the first Black, well, actually biracial candidate and a young one, and then a candidate with a female presidential candidate, both of those campaigns embodied change, a different way about how the system was going. It's just a question of how you clothed the change. So I would say 2 constitutional law professors getting sworn in as president and vice president, Obama and Biden. I was crying.
Yeah,
kind of embodies that in a bit too. And then so this led to the first woman really seriously running. There have been female candidates before, but the first one that had a viable campaign and made it to the ballot grew out of this. That's part of it. And since then, we've had, I'm not even sure where to take this. We've had Pluto is now in the next sign down. It's in Taurus at this point. It was last in Taurus during the 30s,
Okay.
during the buildup to World War II. And so Uranus in Taurus is now bringing all kinds of financial instability, financial issues, restructuring, and also different ways of approaching environmental resources, because Taurus is very much about resources. So in the 30s, Social Security started, the SEC was founded.
Right.
There was Tennessee Valley Authority, Work Project Administration, things to deal with how we were going to deal with water and with the resources and how we we're putting people to work. And all this stuff is now back up for re-examination.
Yeah, kind of refurbishing, right? Rebooting.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, so Pluto went through Capricorn, and it hit the degree that it was in when the U.S. Declaration of Independence was signed, and people were talking about the Pluto return. Yeah. Well, it depends on how you date the starting of the United States. So for at least the declaration of it, we've revisited the ground rules. Interestingly, Benjamin Franklin had his son at exactly the degree of that, so he really was the mastermind of it. We will revisit this one more time. At the end of the year, Pluto will go back to that. But what I want to stress is we're not done with what Pluto can do with the US, because when it's in Aquarius, it's moving toward the spot that it occupied when the US Constitution was written, which is very different from declaring your independence. And in the first few years of Pluto being in Aquarius, the different colonies decided, okay, we'll be a confederation of states, and then we'll do this, then we'll do that. Then they adopted a constitution. Interestingly, in the same year that France saw the Bastille being stormed, 1789, right. And I believe there was a document called Declaration of the Rights of Man, something like that there. So Pluto in Aquarius did, into its transit, birth a new vision of democracy. And that's what we're heading toward revisiting.
So, and you might have heard me get this wrong the other night in my PNN live stream, where I thought that Pluto in Aquarius was what was happening during the Civil War.
No.
Yeah. So, and then they corrected me in the chat.
Well, no, there are correlations to the Civil War. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius was in the late 18th century. So 1770, late 1770s into 1798, something like that. I could be wrong on the years, but late 1700s. That's what's important to keep in mind. Civil War, here's what's interesting about that. Depends on when you think it started. I ran a chart for the first shot at Fort Sumter, which is what is generally considered to be the start of the Civil War. And what's fascinating about it is Uranus was in Taurus in the years preceding the Civil War. Uranus was in Taurus in the years preceding World War II. Just peg that in your head. Neptune, no one's talking about Neptune. It's a huge player in this. Neptune in the buildup to the Civil War, Neptune opposed the Neptune of the Declaration of Independence chart. Neptune is all about, on a really positive side, it's like idealism, but it can have religion, it can carry overtones of delusion, of deception. It can also stand for racism. And interestingly, the Republican Party was founded with Neptune in Pisces, which is where it's been for the past few years. The Republican Party has had its Neptune return, and it's now embraced upside down land as its way of being.
Yeah, that's how I describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Backwards.
So getting back to the Civil War, what's important to know is that when it started, Mercury communication was at the spot that Neptune currently is. So there's one resonance. And Uranus, currently in Taurus, has been traveling over territory where there were placements during the Civil War, being most importantly the moon in Taurus. Now, the moon in Taurus doesn't like to let go of things, doesn't like to let go of property, no offense, but on a collective level. And part of what the Civil War was about was economic matters, not wanting to have property taken from you. The fact that there was a huge disparity in the economic power of the South versus the North, and the South, they said, the southern states needed slave labor to keep the economy going. So that has been ripped up again and brought to the surface. So there's a connection there.
So Uranus and Taurus is happening now, right?
Happening now.
And it started in 2018?
No, it's moved more recently. I will tell you when that happened.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, as I'm vamping here, what's important to know? No, maybe it was. Hold on. Yes, it was 2018.
And I'm not an astrologer.
You guys are dumping it into your head just right. I can't remember everything. But now, some interesting stuff about two other things. Uranus was in Gemini at the start of the Civil War, and it was smack on. The U.S. was having its Uranus return. So the U.S. or the Declaration of Independence chart is hardwired for dissent and disruption and changing things a lot. So Civil War time came around, first fire shot at Fort Sumter, and Uranus in the sky was had returned to where it was in the U.S. chart, which is going to happen again in a few years.
So let's go back. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to say the one other thing I want to throw into this is that the Declaration of Independence chart has Gemini on the door to the house of partners and open enemies. Gemini, and it's got Uranus right there. So like we're wired for destabilizing influences. And I challenge you to count the number of people with a Gemini sun that have dominated our news in the past 5 and 6 years.
Like somebody named DJT with the initials and
one of
MTG.
And I could just go through his administration. It's actually pretty scary how many of them are. So
we'll have to do that. We'll have to get the numbers on that.
Mm-hmm.
When we, have a PNN or do another show.
Off somewhere, and
there's a few things, and I think we have to get this out of the way. And thank you for that history. As we know, I have a chat here, but it doesn't seem to be easy for me to read. It's not really moving. Today, we're going to look at what happened today.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to look at if this energy is going to shift. As you know, I spent 11 years in Nashville. I consider it my second home. And you know what happened today at 10:15 in the morning. And I didn't find out till later today. The day started. I'm a psychic. I can't help. My antennas are up all the time. I can't help picking up on what's going on. I do my best to shun some things, but I cannot fathom another school shooting. I cannot wrap my mind around what we're seeing. We're going from a civilized, sort of pretty civilized, like I was talking about earlier, society to an uncivil society where this just a country where we have more guns than citizens, and rather than making more stringent gun laws, we have people in positions of leadership being so gravely, pun intended, irresponsible as to say, no way, we're not doing this. We're not having any reining in of the guns and the laws or assault weapons. Is there an astrological configuration in the United States chart that points to this kind of just total disregard for human life, to the point where children are being slaughtered in their classrooms and nothing is done? Is there something fixed? What is our astrological challenge there, if there is one? And what about what was going on today?
Okay, there are two challenges, and they're actually not fixed. They're mutable. Looking at the Declaration of Independence chart, one of them is that Uranus in Gemini that I mentioned, it's in the 6th house of business as usual, regular behavior, but it's very, very close to the doorway to open enemies. And that's a disruptive influence, and it's a disruptive mindset with Geminis, like information coming through that is disrupted. But the main problem, I think, is the fact that we have Neptune, or the main challenge, we have Neptune in Virgo in the 9th house of belief systems and the laws. And Neptune in Virgo is what has led to this weird reinterpretation of the language of the Second Amendment to drop the beginning phrase about the purpose being to maintain a well-regulated militia. That's been dropped, and now it's turned into radicalism, and it's the perspective. Now, the last 4, 5, 6 years have been hammering at this from different directions, and that got hit again really strongly from late last August until last week. And there is a shift happening this week, but it's one of those, it gets worse before it gets better things. And we saw that it gets worse. I actually started my forecast with this week with this week in cartoon images, fire shooting from everyone's heads, eyes, and mouths. And that's because there's a pileup in Aries, which is angry, which rules guns, it rules aggression and fighting. And Mercury, pulling things through the air and thoughts, is really close to Jupiter, a planet that throws flame accelerant into anything.
Oh, wow.
And in the chart for the shooting, there's a woman. I mean, that's a rarity that there's a woman
that was striking, and even it just made it even more disturbing that it's just a law of averages, right? The odds are eventually it's going to be a woman.
But a woman who was heavily influenced by Neptune. I will not be surprised if there isn't indication of either medication or extremist religious beliefs or mental health issues. There is something very strongly indicated in this chart of, I mean, personally, I can't imagine anybody being sane and engaging in this kind of behavior,
right.
But there is an astrological signature for it. Now, why am I saying there's something good coming out of this? Because 2 reasons. One is Mars, the planet that rules how our actions, how we push ourselves forward. Mars has moved into the sign of Cancer and will be there for 2 months. Cancer's the home, it's family, it's children.
And the United States.
And the United States, right. But Mars in Cancer isn't a comfortable position for this planetary energy. A good way that it can play out is fighting for those you love. So this could trigger some actual pushing forward some action, some agendas, but more importantly, we're moving into eclipse season. And the next eclipses, I think, are going to bring this issue back up for resetting and revisiting. And it's not just going to be talking, but actual action occurring. The eclipses are in the signs of Aries and Libra, which have to do with how we get along with each other, what the ground rules are for coexisting on this planet. And this starts with a total solar eclipse at the end of Aries, maximum Aries on April 19th and 20th. And this sets a process off that's going to go on for about 2 years. And interestingly, okay, eclipses always hit the reset button, and solar eclipses boot something out and then like reset your system and install a new operating system or an upgrade so that when it comes back online, something is different and it's to be hoped improved. Excuse me.
We'll let you drink some water.
Almost all the eclipses in this family coming up are solar eclipses. So almost all of them are hitting the, we're going to do it differently. We're going to do it differently. We're going to do it differently. And so I think it's highly probable that over the next 2 years, there will be actual radical change. We've done it before. We've had assault weapon bans before.
They worked. Yes. And I I want to speak to, if any community would be impactful in terms of getting the message out from a real strong, on so many levels, maternal kind of an energy.
Mm-hmm.
I know from having lived there, and I lived right down the street from where the shooting happened today, that there's a tight-knit community of creatives and artists. I mean, I was so struck when I moved to Nashville. That's where I really had my spiritual awakening. And even to the point that whenever I, left to come back home and visit and went back to Nashville, and I'd be in the plane and I'd be overlooking Nashville as we were getting ready to land. And I would notice that there was just something about the energy in Nashville that was, I would almost describe it as feminine. That it has a kind of a Cancerian feel to it where there's a nurturing energy there. Now, I moved back here in 2002. But it always did strike me that it felt like a place of comfort. And I partly attributed that to, the real Christian, like love your brothers and sisters kind of, we're not talking about extremist Christianity, right? Real spirituality. That's where Sadhguru has his ashram about 2 hours east. And that's where I met him in Nashville. And there was an amazing spiritual community. Like, that's where I found my creative spiritual home. And that's why I stayed for 11 years until after 9/11. I just wanted to kind of be back home. And I think of all the communities, Nashville being such a mecca for music and creatives, mm-hmm. It's also an opportunity for, like, I think about Brad Paisley, who just wrote that song for Ukraine, right? Music is such a strong medium. It has such an ability to send out a healing message to the country and to the world. So I'm wondering, or you're saying this could mark a turning point. I know we said that about Uvalde and Sandy Hook and all these different places, and they're all so such mind-blowing tragedies. I just wonder if this time it happened in a place where, I don't know which sign Nashville is, when it was established. We could maybe look it up.
Yeah, we could look that up. I will tell you that one reason, three reasons, that I think there's staying power now. One is Mars being in Cancer for a couple of months. People are going to start fighting for kids. Secondly, this next eclipse family. And third, the influences that have been really pumping up the gaslighting have moved out of the sky.
Oh, that's good to know.
Pretty much. So there, the major stuff that was hitting on what I call the cosmic fog machine, bad aspects to Neptune that were just making all kinds of, let's call it hooey fly out. Those aren't existing anymore.
What is it? Is Neptune in Pisces now?
Neptune has been in Pisces, yes. And there's some good things coming out of it, but Neptune in Pisces had some bad aspects to eclipses in Gemini and Sagittarius when Trump was in office, and that just escalated all kinds of stuff. And since last August, Mars has been in Gemini doing the same kind of thing.
Right.
But now it's cleared out. We don't have that anymore. Yay.
Yay. So when do we see an end to the Trump madness? To just jump topics.
Oh,
They're
well,
all related.
It depends on which chart of his you use. There are two birth times. Everybody uses, the most commonly used one has him with a 29-degree Leo ascendant, the King of Kings.
Why are there two charts?
Well, there's one birth time everybody uses, and then there's the birth time his second wife says is correct.
And that was
the client of mine knows Marla Maples, and he's
okay.
an astrologer too, and he works with this one. So we will see stuff coming up that will show this. Either way, this year there's kind of like a forest of no return aspect with the ninth house of legal matters just being packed and packed and packed, and lying, deceit, fraud having to do with money coming to light, being pushed on. Pluto's move into Aquarius. I ran a chart for it actually, the moment that it moved into Aquarius, set for New York City, and what that did to Trump, and all kinds of stuff having to do with big things having to do with money and his wounding with other people's money coming to light, coming to light, coming to light. Now, in terms of when, if the chart that everyone uses with the 29-degree Leo ascendant is correct, the wrecking ball hits well and good May of 2024. If the chart of earlier in the morning, like 9:51, it has a middle degree Leo ascendant. So it's still Leo, it's just not the king.
So the Leo ascendant is part of both charts?
Yeah. I mean, the times are off only by enough. The ascendant changes 4 degrees every
few minutes,
a degree every 4 minutes. So they're not all that far off in terms of time, but it's enough. If the 9:51 chart that Marla Maple says is his time is correct, by October, it's end of the line, just absolute end of the line.
This year?
Mm-hmm.
That's quite a different. That's quite a discrepancy between that and would you say 2024?
Yes. So we'll see which one it is, but they're different influences that hit. If the earlier chart is correct, the last eclipse in the what we've been in eclipses on the Taurus and Scorpio axis, which have to do with resources, your money, other people's money, what you've been doing with it, corruption, lies, deceit, whatever. The final eclipse in that, which wraps things up, if the earlier time is correct, happens right on the doorway to his career house and completely shuts down things. If the other time is correct, Uranus moves across the doorway to his career house in May of 2024, and everything just falls apart.
I like the sound of October of this year a lot better.
We'll see.
And isn't there a big court case coming up in October for him?
Yes.
Do you know? I'm trying to think. There are so many. I just
So that's when New York State is, and the judge is saying no delays. That's when New York State is going against the Trump Organization for tax and insurance fraud. The claim that its chief financial officer is in Rikers Island for. So that guy's already pled, and then the organization itself goes to trial on those charges in October. We could just go down the line. The rape case is next month, and the judge in April, the Jean Carroll rape case, the judge in that has said, no, we're not delaying it.
That's April.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need like a flow chart.
It's unbelievable. He's the most criminal man I've ever heard. That, I mean, in my mind, I can't think of anybody who's more criminal. What is that Jupiter aspect that has kept him so lucky all these years?
It's in his second house of money.
Because who ever heard of this?
I think what's most important in his chart is, so he's an early baby boomer. Baby boomers are Pluto in Leo, and he's got Pluto in Leo in the 12th house in either chart, the 12th house of hidden things. The 12th house is one of the houses of criminality. And so he's had access to behind the scenes power. I mean, that's kind of like a marker for entertainment purposes only, mafia.
Do you think that you could get a copy of Benito Mussolini's chart? Not right the second.
No, I could see what's out there. Yes, I mean I can find it. I can find his birth date. Yes.
You know why I'm asking you that?
Yes, I do, and I know someone who has a different theory than you. So,
what's the theory?
Yes, I'm happy to look at Mussolini's chart and see how it compares to Trump's.
I cannot believe the similarities of those two beings. It's so striking. What was the other theory? Now you have to tell me.
Oh, no, another psychic I know thinks that he's the reincarnation of a Venezuelan dictator who was kind of like a small potatoes guy. I can't remember his name.
Well, he could have been. He could have been that too, right?
It's not necessarily mutually exclusive.
We have many lifetimes. Yeah, I mean, my theory is that he jumped in, his soul jumped back into a body so quickly that he kept a lot of the same features. The body language, I mean, and I've shown a picture before on my videos that I found online of Benito Mussolini, the same facial structure, same expression with the jaw jutting out. And if you see video of Mussolini, you know, it's old, and all black and white, obviously, but he stands like him. Just, there are certain mannerisms and body postures that Trump has that are just, you know, brand. They're just his brand, right? You can totally think about, when you think about him, you can totally see that. And I'm curious to know if maybe we can do another show and do that next time. So, do you see astrologically democracy being strengthened, or at any point, or I don't know if you can see aspects that would show you that it may be a better way to put it is a good time or favorable conditions for our democracy to be strengthened, or is that something available in a chart?
It's going to be transformed. I'm personally optimistic, but the two things I'll say are this. Right now, we have a relationship going on between Pluto and the nodes of the moon, which show what we're moving toward and what we're moving away from. That is parallel to what happened in 1789. Pluto was in a different spot in the sign, but it was in the same relationship that's happening this year into November, really strong into the middle of the summer. So there's something already at work that is a parallel to the energies that in 1789 led to the writing of the Constitution and all kinds of stuff in France that took out the monarchy and the aristocracy. And
But the Constitution, the writing of the Constitution.
Right. So that's thing one. Thing two is, as Pluto gets closer to the spot that it occupied when the Constitution was written, and I don't know offhand what degree it is and how many years, Pluto's going to be in Aquarius until 2044. So we have a long time.
But does it go in and out, or am I thinking of a different configuration?
Next year it goes in and out, but then it's there for like 20 years.
So this is a huge,
it's there for a really long time
deal that's happening right now.
And what I'm heading toward is, by the time Pluto hits the spot that it occupied when the Constitution was written, we will be revising and revisiting what the Constitution is. So I would expect the ground rules to change. And there's a spectrum of possibilities. We can hope that things like, oh, I don't know, the ERA might finally end up in there. But who knows? Who knows? Right. So yes, I personally am very oddly calm about this. But my planet of highest degree is Jupiter, so I'm always seeing the highest.
Yeah, and I'm a Sag. I'm a Sag, and I always say, we're ruled by Jupiter, and we're ridiculously optimistic. Mm-hmm. What do you see in terms of the collective energy of the people? Let's just look at the planetary, the planet. What do we see in terms of people coming together and being the power?
Well, two things playing into that. With Saturn being in Pisces for the next 2 years, we haven't addressed that yet. There could be taking responsibility for the collective experience a lot more. Saturn is where we're challenged to commit to things, and Pisces is the interconnectedness of all life. There could be environmental problems, particularly involving water, that precipitate this.
Yeah, Saturn and Pisces, absolutely.
But with Pluto in Aquarius so Saturn's in Pisces for the first 2 years of Pluto going in and out of Aquarius and giving us an idea of what we're going to be doing. Bottom line is there's always a realignment of power when Pluto changes expression, when it changes sign. And Pluto in Aquarius has coincided historically with grassroots coming together and collective action against the established order or the entrenched order. So that bodes really well. And what's happening in France this week? Okay. People are in the streets. What's happening in Israel?
And Israel,
people
right.
are in the streets.
Right. So, that's true.
So there will likely be much more of a collective grassroots of democracy.
Oh, yeah, maybe? That's my group. Grassrootsofdemocracy.com. Yeah, but could it go either way? I mean, I don't want to wax negative, but it could.
Well, we'll have back and forth. I mean, think about what happened with the French Revolution. It kind of got insane as the notion of power knocked a bunch of people into absolute bloodthirst. Now, I am not predicting we will see that in the U.S. All right, I want that to make that absolutely clear. That
don't
is not
scare anyone.
That's not what I see coming.
Yeah,
but you have to remember what happened in history. So it could go. It will. Pluto's very extreme, so there will likely be this. But think of what's happened coming into this. We've come out of a period where Saturn has been in the last 3 to 4 years, has pushed us into getting really clear on our priorities and really paying attention to our own personal well-being. Solitude and isolation has become part of a fact of life. And a lot of friendships have completely restructured. Communities have fractured and come together in a different way. Yeah. Online communities have built and strengthened, and all that's coming with us.
Due to the pandemic, you're referring to. Yeah.
But there were astrological things that would have had that happen even if it hadn't taken the form.
Oh, that would have been interesting if it took a different form. Like, I wonder what other kind of form that could have taken.
Something, yeah, because we've lived through, Saturn goes through the same, it has a 28.5 to 30-year cycle. So
right.
Most people now have experienced Saturn in these different signs before. And in fact, Saturn in Pisces this year is going to be where it was in 1994. So if anyone wants to think about what was going on in their life at that point, in terms of what they were challenged to commit to or set up new boundaries involving.
I'll have to think about that. That's when I went into a huge spiritual awakening time. So, and when Saturn went into Pisces again, my impression of that was that people would lean more into the spiritual and be kind of, to me, it felt like a call to be disciplined or to put structure in the spiritual, your personal spiritual life or the collective. So does that sound right?
Yeah, and that is one expression of the energy. Religion trying to clamp down on people, that's another.
Right. So that's why I was saying it could go either way. Like when you mentioned the Aquarian kind of influenced breaking down of old establishments and structures, like that could kind of go either way, because look at what the extremists, I mean, we have a party that's actually calling themselves, one segment of this party is calling themselves domestic terrorists. We are the domestic terrorists, right? And they're really all in on let's just take the whole thing, let's just take the whole country down. And I know that there's something astrological that is kind of lending itself to that extremism. But that would be one way of breaking down an establishment. And then the other way is to, make democracy more fair. So like I'm saying, it could go either way. And I'm of the mind that that's why collectively it's imperative that we work together on how we think as a unit, as a human, society. So do you feel like, just personally, do you feel like it's up to us? Because I know that the astrology gives you the map, right? I always look at the astrology like a blueprint. And then we have some influence.
Or here's your navigational tool, but it's up to you how you use it. Every aspect can play out. It's like a spectrum of possibilities, and some people are more inclined to go one way or another, depending on how things interact with your own chart. But my experience has been pressures come at a person or at a collective from multiple angles, kind of shoving them in a certain direction. And there is something happening now that's testing the promise of the 60s. So we'll see.
That's funny. That was we just had a psychic moment, because I was just going to bring up the 60s. Like, what was going on then?
Well, Uranus and Pluto were conjunct, like 65 to 68. They were traveling really close together in the sign of Virgo. And the people who were born during that time have a signature that I call, they have a signature for being a change maker. And this signature was awakened starting in 2012. Ding, ding.
Yeah, I know. We just went full circle back to the 2012 thing. So that was what was going on in the 60s. I saw a documentary, I think it was just on the History Channel, that was about Apollo 8. I think that was the mission where they took the picture of the Earth from the moon. Yeah, and so after that, all these major protests started happening, and the protests ended the Vietnam War, and the first Earth Day happened, I think it was in 1970. And so that seemed like a huge astrological shift that happened, where we were seeing, to see the Earth from the moon in a photograph, that was a huge paradigm shift. It changed everything, I think. So
that was broadcast, and I believe one of the I think it was broadcast on something like Christmas Eve. I associate it with Christmas. Now, this could be my mind is conflating all this, but there was, and maybe it was a later one, but there was an Apollo mission where they actually had the camera showing the Earth at Christmas time, and one of the astronauts making what?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, it was. That was in this documentary. That now that I'm thinking of it, now that you mention it, yeah. So big perspective.
So all of that stuff is going to get another look as Saturn moves through Pisces. It's going to be opposing where Uranus and Pluto were in the late 60s, and it'll give us a different vantage point on things, and it will give those individuals who were born with that configuration multiple opportunities to learn how they've been using their energy. Like responsible, you've been responsible.
One last chance before they leave the planet.
they might get a second one if they live long enough.
Like a second wind, right? What do we want to do before we depart this earthly plane? So, I don't want to keep you too long. Plus, I'm going to go live for Psychic News Network. What would you say is going on astrologically as a collective whole to give us, it's always good to feel like I'm going to do this and I have the necessary support, right? And you mentioned a few things already, maybe just recap. Like, because this aspect is happening, it looks like we have good conditions for our involvement to really be effective and to really work. Like we were talking about the unfortunate tragic shooting today. There are certain aspects that say if we really, get together and we're really intentional and we are persistent, this is likely to just reach a tipping point and to shift. Are there any key things that you can point to, maybe 2 or 3 or maybe more, that give us hope? Like, yeah, if we jump on that train, it's going to go where we need it to go. If we jump on together.
Everything starts with how centered and balanced the individual is. Everything starts with the individual shoring up boundaries, maintaining proper borders, taking care of your own physical, emotional needs, and let me interject here, having fun, taking your perspective and sinking it more into the everyday, where we have been brought up to be long-term planners. I'm not saying don't plan long-term, but more than normal, more than in previous points in your life, bring your experience of life down to the moment. Like, what am I doing now? And making sure that there is meaning on a daily basis for yourself. That then puts you in the better actual condition energetically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, all of the leads, to connect with the people who you feel a kinship with. There's been a lot also pushing people into a truer, more authentic expression of themselves and not giving a flying F about what other people think, just doing, here's who I am, this is what I'm doing. And with all the insanity in the world, it does kind of further encourage the world doesn't make sense, so I may as well do what I want to do, as long as it's not hurting other people. So people have been encouraged to be astrologically much more conscious of what matters most to you. And a lot of relationships have been thrown out of your life. I talk about a cosmic centrifuge that's taken people and gone to the far edge of the universe. Often people you thought would be there forever. And the people that you're linking with now have a common set of values, much more so than before. And notice the growth, the emotional growth occurring with those types of communities. And those are the ones that are building more and more and more of the web that everything else is going to proceed from. And then astrologically, on top of all of this, we have a huge incentive to act individually much more boldly coming up with the next eclipse cycle and revamping our relationship agreements with other people so that we are not positioning ourselves into what we think they want, but being who we really are. And this will lead to like an army of self-actualized people marching shoulder to shoulder, clear on what's important to them and just not even paying attention to trivia.
Yeah, so that spiritual, like what I was speaking to, the Saturn and Pisces energy, feeling like that, when I talk about spiritual discipline and practice, what I really mean is like the Saturn energy is about rules and structure. And, you better do this or else. A little bit of that, too. If you don't pay attention, you're going to get whacked. Like when you get into Saturn return, if you've just been on the wrong path, I always say the angels will just rip it all out from under you if you don't get the message and do make the change that needs to happen. So that Saturn energy can do that. So to me, collectively, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Cosmic 2x4. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the Saturn in Pisces just, globally feels to me, it feels like, all right, get your house in order, you know, so you can be more effective. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way. We all know that if we do things in an orderly way, if we do the day-to-day, you know, keeping structure so that we feel balanced and we eat well and we do our exercise, and we all know the drill. So Saturn in Pisces individually feels like we would tend to those things more. Like a few years back, all of a sudden the word mindfulness started to be like, you know, trending. And yoga. I mean, we remember when yoga was just like something people considered twisting yourself into a pretzel, and not much more than that. So I feel like the Saturn in Pisces is speaking to getting our own house in order so we can be effective. Because we're not effective if we don't feel good.
No. And I want to throw in here too that the opposite end of the cosmic 2x4 is Saturn rewards hard work. And
that's nice.
Saturn does. You behave like it's the planet of adulting. So you behave like a responsible citizen, and things start to fall into place. So you can look at Saturn in Pisces as, well, let's just look at NATO expanding and reforming, and countries coming together to say we are building this protective shield around what we believe in.
And what through everything, just speaking of that briefly, what through astrologically, did you see something that through the chaos of the attack on Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, was there something?
I have charts. I have charts for that. And if you on my YouTube channel, there's a playlist that says mundane events, and there is a very long one that analyzes the attack on Ukraine.
Oh, interesting. I would think that would have Aquarius aspects to it.
A lot of Pisces, actually.
Boom, boom. Oh, really?
Which can bring incredible loss, incredible death.
Do you see a healing? Have you looked lately?
Yeah, actually, Zelensky is an astonishing leader. I've got a lot of stuff about his chart in my mundane events playlist also, and it's going to come out of this.
He must have a lot of Jupiter in his chart, a lot of Jupiter influences.
He's another Aquarian.
Interesting. This is the age of Aquarius, right? So let's just conclude with you letting us know how you can help people in their own individual lives. How to reach. I mean, you did say it at the beginning, but how to reach you and what you're offering. Are you offering any classes or?
At the moment, no, although there's some in the works. I will have a talk about Pluto and Aquarius, and I will have one about Saturn and Pisces. I've just had life getting involved in the way. I do have a guide to Uranus and Taurus that explains what has happened historically and also takes it through the signs. That's in the shop at my site. I have a guided visualization for working with Pluto. Highly recommended.
Oh, nice.
With this shift. That's also in the shop at my site. My site is empowermentunlimited.net. I have a spoken podcast for every week, comes out on Friday. It starts the Monday after. I have a forecast for every month, every full moon, every new moon. I do private consultations. I help people figure out how they can make what's being triggered in their chart and how they can make the most of it. And I intend to have a wide variety of people, but a lot of people lately, I seem to have an influx of gay and lesbian clients, which is just fine with me. So, people who have been misunderstood. It's kind of like there's an outsider vibe to a whole lot of my clients, and I am a safe place for the weirdos.
For people that are unusual. So, you have a YouTube channel too, don't you?
Yes, Professional Aquarian is my YouTube channel. And all of my forecasts are double posted there.
Okay. How often do you do videos? Twice a month?
Well, there's one every week with the weekly forecast. every 2 weeks there's a new moon or a full moon one, and then every month there's a new monthly one, and then intermittently little shorts will show up.
Cool.
If I run across something out in the world that is embodying an astrological aspect, often in a funny way, I will put up a short about it.
Excellent. Well, my head is full.
I've got tons more. Anytime you want to talk, you let me know.
Yes, we'll do it again. Maybe once a month. Maybe that would work out. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Everybody, get in touch with Kathy. Get your astrology read. And I'll see you again real soon. Here's signing off.
Bye, everyone.
Spear Podcast. Good night.